Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And hello again, everyone. So again, we continue Shakespeare today. Class number 4, we'll talk more about Shakespeare's comedies, Shakespeare's last plays, and then we'll probably have some time to speak about the sonnet. Last time we had a discussion about new themes that English literature in the Renaissance was acquiring, was discussing and tackling. And Shakespeare was one of the early writers to discuss themes that are, even today, important and significant. We've seen, for example, Othello. We've seen Shylock. We said these two characters are considered outsiders in a sense. Othello was the black man from Africa, and Shylock was the Jewish man from I don't know where. Shylock is a Jew, he's Jewish, and he's treated badly mainly actually because of his religion, not because of anything else. Othello is hated because he's black, because of his color. These are issues and themes that Shakespeare is raising. Some people accuse Shakespeare of being a racist, anti-feminist. You know, racist if you hate somebody because of his color origin, because he or she is African or black or Asian or Chinese or whatever. This is racism. It's horrible. Racism is the worst thing you could ever have, and I'm sure you're going to learn from literature not to be racist. Now, if you hate Jews because they are Jews, this is called anti-Semitism. Shakespeare is accused sometimes by some people of being anti-Semitic because of the horrible way Shylock is depicted in the play, and because of how horribly Shylock is treated in The Merchant of Venice. But many critics defend Shakespeare. They say, no, Shakespeare is not doing this because he's raising these questions. He's bringing these questions up in the open so that people can have discussions and debates and ask questions and hopefully find the correct answers. The same thing about, again, going back to Othello. Othello was horribly treated. Mainly, we see Iago, one of the scariest characters in Shakespeare, insult Othello only because he is black. He calls him the Black Moor. He calls him an animal. He hates the fact that he married the most beautiful woman in Venice. And eventually, he makes Othello kill his wife, Desdemona. Can you imagine how hateful, how wicked someone has to be to make someone kill his wife or someone kill her husband? This is Iago. But interesting thing about Iago, in Shakespeare, remember in Hamlet, he has 7 soliloquies, major soliloquies, and we love him for that. We identify with him. We feel sorry for Hamlet. We share his concern, his feels, his feelings of fear, of love, of hope, of even hesitation, right? Because of the soliloquies. He comes closer to us. He communicates with us. Now in Othello, Iago does more soliloquies in a way or another than Othello. So the question is here, what is Shakespeare doing? Now some critics believe that at that time, in the Elizabethan age, some of the audience might have considered Iago as the hero, as the protagonist, the main character. Because in a way he was protecting the European white society from infiltration by black people, by intruders, by foreigners, by outsiders, in a way. This is, of course, racist, supremacist, which is wrong. But now, because life has changed and people have changed in so many ways, this is considered totally wrong. The same thing applies to Shylock, The Merchant of Venice. This play has been considered as a comedy for a long time. Why? Because nobody dies, right?
Yes.
And because it ends happily. But who's happy at the end? The white Christian people. Bassanio, Portia, and maybe Antonio is a little bit happy. But Shylock, he loses his daughter, he loses most of his money, he loses his religion. He is forced to convert to Christianity. And he loses his dignity and his chance to take revenge. We're not talking about revenge as a good thing here, but at least, remember, he was saying like, I am like you. It's not about revenge. It's about the shared humanity. If you wrong me, if I wrong you, you take revenge. If I wrong you, okay. So it's like people would say, no, I wrong you. We've seen Antonio wrong him so many times. But only Shylock, the intruder, the stranger, is not allowed to take it. So it's not about revenge, it's about equality. He's saying, I'm a human being like you. If you prick us, don't we bleed? If you tickle us, don't we laugh? If you poison us, don't we die? We are the same, so why not? And in The Merchant of Venice, Shakespeare is also doing something brilliant, amazing about women. Again, Shakespeare composed his plays to be performed on the stage rather than published and read. Now, women at that time were not allowed, important point, were not allowed to perform on the stage. But we have women characters. So who would be playing these characters? Young men, beardless young men with soft voices. Okay? So interesting. Now, Portia, we know Portia is a man, but we suspend our disbelief. Portia is a man playing the role of a woman. Yeah. And now, Portia, what does she do in the play? She disguises as a man.
As a lawyer.
So a man, a woman, a man. And not an ordinary man, a lawyer, intellectual, a thinker. At that time, women were not allowed to be lawyers because they were thought to be less intellectual, less intelligent than men. But Shakespeare here defies this custom, this idea. He shows that women are as intellectual, if not more intellectual, as men are. And so, but somewhere else, Shakespeare is accused of being anti-feminist. Okay, don't forget this word, feminine. You know feminine? Feminine? Feminist is an activist, a person, usually a woman, who calls for the equal rights of women. That women must have their rights as men. Feminism is the noun. Now, anti-feminist, someone who doesn't like women, someone who thinks women, probably likes women, but thinks that women are not equal, they should stay at home. There was a common thing in the past, which is very wrong now, that women should be barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen. Now Shakespeare is proving them wrong. He's saying, okay, now, what did she do, Portia? She tricked everyone. She managed to beat the unbeatable Shylock. Shylock is cunning in so many ways. When he says, oh, a pound of flesh just for merry sport. And now, I want my pound of flesh. But what the hell are you going to do with a pound of flesh, Shylock? This is not meat. You don't eat flesh. Yeah. And he says, I will bait with it. I will feed it to the fish. If it doesn't feed anything, it will feed my revenge. Not for revenge, probably, but for equality. Now, she beats him because she says, there should be no one drop of blood. If you take more blood, then you are trying to kill someone in Venice. And if you do that, you'll have to be punished. So, why does she beat Shylock? Only because she changes hair, clothes, and puts a fake mustache and a fake beard. So Shakespeare is saying this distinction between men and women in intellect is fake. Is a matter of, it's a funny thing because it's not true. It's not true. So we have these important issues. Shakespeare discussing them 400 years ago. This is how timeless, how brilliant, how smart, how intelligent Shakespeare is. How relevant he is to even today, everywhere. Shakespeare is universal and timeless. Not because of his stories, because I told you this maybe. The stories in Shakespeare are mainly not his stories, but because of the language, because of the plot, because of the events, the scenes, and the acts, because of the ideas that address us even today. We discussed Hamlet, and we said there is some of us in Hamlet, and there is something from Hamlet. I have never, every time I teach to be or not to be, like every one of the students like to be or not to be, that is a question. Because at one particular point or more in our lives, we have this crisis of identity, who we are, and then to be or not to be. That is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the arrows and slings of outrageous time, or carry arms against a sea of trouble, as Palestinians were suffering because of the Israeli occupation, because of the siege, because of the internal division. It's not easy for individuals to fight this huge fight. So we ask the question, should we live in submission, in fear, in humiliation, and die thus? Or should we carry arms against a sea of trouble? Look, notice the beautiful language, the metaphor. A sea of, not only a sea, but a sea of trouble. And by opposing in them, to die, to sleep. Now, I asked a question in the assignments I'll be showing you probably today. As Palestinian, would you sympathize more with Shylock, the guy from Africa, probably originally an Arab, or with Shylock the Jew? Remember, this is not about politics. It's about humanity. How do you feel when you read Shylock? Do we share common, tell me now, do we share, as Palestinians, do we share common fears, concerns, issues, ideas with Shylock? Would you identify with Shylock? Please. Okay, go on.
I think people see us as Palestinians who are not very, how can I say it? You know, they think that we're not injustice, and we're injustice.
Okay.
And they think that we kill people, and they see us in a different way. Also, the religion. They see us as Muslims. That girls, if I go to America, they might say stuff about my hijab.
Okay.
And that I see myself as Shylock.
So you're mistreated because of your religion,
Yeah.
because of how you look. Is that good?
No.
That makes us victims now.
Yeah.
Now, Muslims all over the world are accused of being terrorists, which is totally wrong. That's why there's Islamophobia, people who hate Muslims just for being a Muslim. So, what's your religion or something? I'm a Muslim. Somebody sees your hijab and then,
Yeah.
are you a terrorist? This is racism. This is Islamophobia. So, in a way or another, we are victims exactly as Shylock.
Yeah.
Shylock is a victim. In my opinion, Shylock now is more Palestinian than Israeli.
Yeah.
We share more with Shylock than many Israeli occupiers do. And think about this and probably see what you have to say here. Before I move to Shakespeare's latest late plays, probably we have two students here to recite. Shylock, go on. Go on, please. Raise your voice, please.
He hath discussed me and handed me half a million loath at my losses, mocked at my against, scorned my nation, thwarted my burdens, called my friends, hated my enemies. And what is his reasons? I'm a Jew. Hath not a Jew eyes? Hath not a Jew hands? Organs, dimensions, senses, affection, poison, feed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, hurted by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer. As a Christian, if you perk us, do we not bleed?
Lead.
If you tackle us, do we not load? If we poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? If we are like you and the rest, we will resemble you and that. If a Jew wrong a Christian, what is his humility revenge?
Revenge.
If a Christian wrong a Jew, what should his suffers by the Christian example? Why revenge?
Why? Revenge.
The van you teach me, I will execute, and it shall go hard by, but I will better the instruction.
The instructions. Very good. Nice. So the villainy you teach me, I will execute, but I will better the instruction. Interesting. I have one of my students previously changing this into a Palestinian context and saying that, have not a Palestinian eyes, have not a Palestinian organs, dimensions, senses, affections. If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you poison us, do we not die? As a Christian, as a Jew. Yes, next. On your mobile, okay.
He had disgraced me and hindered me 500,000, laughed of my losses, mocked of my gains, scored my nation, thwarted my bargains, called my friends, hated mine enemies. And what is reason? What is reason? I'm a Palestinian. Had not a Palestinian eyes, have not a Palestinian hands, organs, senses, affection, passion, feed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same disease, hailed by the same means, warm and cold by the same winter and summer, as the Jew is. If you pick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? If we like you in the rest, we will resemble you in that. If a Palestinian wrong a Jew, what is his humanity? Revenge. If a Jew wrong a Palestinian, what should his sufferness be by Jew example? Why? Revenge. The villainy you teach me, I execute, and it shall go high, but I will the instruction.
I will better the instruction. But one thing I need to correct here. Like, it's interesting how I said it before, but you already done this. Very smart of you. But remember, as Palestinians, we have a problem with the Israeli occupations, with the Israelis.
Not the Jew.
Not the Jews. So I would use Zionist instead of Jew here, because we have nothing against Jews because they are Jews. The occupiers happen to be Jews in a way. Some of them are not Jews, by the way, and we still resist them in the same way. Even if Arabs occupy Palestine, Muslims, we have the right to resist and fight back. One more, okay? Same or all the way to the stage? Okay.
Read the one from the book.
Okay, the one from the book.
Yeah.
Please.
Have not a Jew eyes, hath not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passion, fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer. As a Christian is, if you pick us, do we not bleed?
Thank you very much. Now, last time I said, or you noticed that this text is written differently, and we said this is prose. Shakespeare wrote most of his plays in verse, in poetry. But sometimes there are minor characters, the messenger, an ignorant person, uneducated person, a villain, someone not in his right mind. So usually good people or main characters use poetry, but sometimes bad characters, minor characters use prose. But it's interesting how Shakespeare gives Shylock prose. Some people think because this is Shakespeare having something against Shylock himself. Okay? Think of this. It's not that crucial, but it's really interesting. We'll continue with Shakespeare, like I said. So we'll just wrap things up, and then we go back for the last play, The Tempest. Now, remember again, in comedies, we have, again, the world sometimes turned upside down. Comedies end happily. Nobody dies. Yeah. But it doesn't mean comedies are less important, less significant than tragedies, because the themes are also crucial, themes of identity, themes of love, of jealousy, of power, of money, etc. Okay? But sometimes even the comedies are, in a way, more important because they use fun to make serious points, to make fun of the king or to make fun of the monarchy in general. Even today, people laugh at Shakespeare's jokes and funny situation in his plays, and that's, again, how Shakespeare is relevant. Some of the jokes, by the way, and the practical jokes, cannot be seen unless we understand, unless we see them on the stage. because we see the body language and everything. And also remember, last time we discussed something, remember the word sun and sun? We said there's something called the pun. Shakespeare plays on the word. Pun is play on words. When a word has two meanings or two words sound the same. So you think of it and like there's a joke, why is the river very rich? Why is the river, you know the river, very rich? Because it has two banks. What does two banks mean?
Banks of two
Yeah, and bank. So the joke is that the word bank has two meanings. The side of the river, West Bank, okay, and a financial institution where you have a lot of money. So in English, many of the jokes depend on playing on the words and words sounding the same. So Shakespeare does this all the time. So pay attention if the word means something else. Now in Shakespeare's final plays, some of his final plays are really serious and dark, like Timon of Athens, in which there is this theme of hatred towards a human being. Really serious. Some people were like Shakespeare is losing it. In a way, Shakespeare is going to the darker stage. Because this play, in brief, it shows Timon who really hates people for one reason. I'm not going to go into details. But later on, he started to restore hope. I remember how hope in Shakespeare is usually represented by the younger generation, by a new king, by a new life, a new cycle of life. Critics describe these late plays as many things. Pastorals, fables, tragicomedies sometimes. It's not a big deal for me because it's not of a crucial importance here in this course. Now, the last play we'll study for Shakespeare is The Tempest. The Tempest is said to be Shakespeare's one of the last plays. It's not the last one because we have King Henry VIII. You know King Henry VIII?
Yeah.
The Renaissance, what did he do?
16.
What did he do? He's an important name.
Make the king the close man for God in the end.
Yeah, he said goodbye to the Pope of Rome.
Catholic,
He changed the whole religion in.
He made the
England.
pyramid system.
No, he didn't do it, but just that was like the structure of life.
It was already
He was the head of the Church of England. The head of the church was the Pope in Rome. So he separated this. He just lived a totally different life for religion in many ways. Now, in The Tempest, also people find it interesting because they think that some critics think that Shakespeare was saying goodbye to the theater, to people, and giving us hints. He's just ending his career as a playwright. Okay. Now, the story, in brief, I don't want to go in much detail. Probably you can if you find it interesting. A king is exiled by his brother to an island. The island is empty, you know?
Yes.
Why empty? Because they think the island is empty. Because in the Renaissance mentality, the native people were not, in a way, considered civilized and modern like the white Christians of Europe. Remember we spoke about the geographical discoveries?
Yes.
Interesting. But when we study the geographical discoveries, we realize that millions of people were killed because of these. So this is whitewashing. This is erasing the natives. Okay? So the man is Prospero. He lives on an island because his brother kicks him out of his kingdom and he steals the kingdom for himself, the throne. Now this guy, Prospero, look at the name Prospero. We'll comment on the name in a bit. Prospero. Okay? What does he do? He learns magic. He's a magician in a way. He uses magic to trick his brother and restore his kingdom.
Who is the man?
Okay? In the play, he defeats the evil, savage native by the name of Caliban. So we have number one, Prospero, the king. And number two, we have Caliban. Caliban is the native of the island. He is the owner of the island. The island is not empty. But in the mentality of European colonialism, remember colonialism? What's colonialism? Colonialism is
They go to a land and they invade it.
the invasion, the occupation of others' lands and stealing all the raw materials and the resources.
Putting it under
The British Empire colonized like large parts of the world. So Prospero, in a way, was colonizing the island. Because somewhere in the book he says, my island. It's not his island. But this is, again, the Western European mentality of that time. That's why many people, many critics now, like Edward Said, the Palestinian Christian intellectual, believes that the Tempest could be a fable or an allegory of imperialism. Imperialism, colonialism, imperialism. What does it mean? It means it teaches the white Europeans, the English people, that they have the right to go, occupy, control other lands. Because in a way, they go to civilize, to educate the people. And we know they don't civilize. They don't occupy. And as Palestinians, we have paid a heavy price for British colonialism and imperialism. We're still under occupation because of this mentality, white mentality. Now, it's very funny. If you look at the names, Prospero is like closer to prosper. Prosper means to become rich. Prosperity to become rich. Because this guy comes to an island and he makes it rich, makes it important, gives it a name. And Caliban is also a play on the word called anagram, cannibal. Do you know what the word cannibal means? Cannibal. Cannibalism. Cannibalism is eating the flesh of human being. A cannibal is someone who eats the flesh of the human being. Savage, A savage. Like some people still exist. They do this. Like very, very rare. But it happens. Like it was in the news like 2-3 years ago. Cannibalism is eating human flesh. So, is Shakespeare playing on these words? Is using Caliban as cannibal, cannibalism, and Prospero is it. So, the European is the good, the rich, the educated, the civilized, and the natives are the bad, the cannibal, the savages, the backwards, the uncivilized. So, in a way, because this man goes to that island, he assumes it's empty, he controls it, he says, it's my island. He takes upon himself to civilize, to educate. Caliban, in a way, it's considered what? An allegory of colonialism, of imperialism. Again, what does it mean, an allegory of colonialism or imperialism? When a literary text teaches you that you have the right to go to other lands, occupy them, control them, colonize them. We read funny stories sometimes, like when we read the story about the lion and the mouse. This is an allegory. How the mouse, the little animal, can save the lion, the king of the jungle. This is an allegory which teaches us a lesson. What lesson? That the weak has a moral. Thank you. The weak can sometimes be stronger than the strongest. Can help, can save the strong. So when, in a way, in the mentality of Western people, literature did some kind of, or played some kind of role to teach them that they have the moral obligation to go and civilize other peoples around the world. But sadly, this wasn't good. Was good for England because it brought them a lot of riches, prosperity, and money and wealth. But for the natives, it was really horrible. Even today, 400 years later, 300 years later, 200 years later, 100 years later, the natives still pay the price of British imperialism and European imperialism. In Africa, in Asia, and in America. So that's The Tempest. Now, in The Tempest, again, there are many interesting things here. Look at this, the last line here. Now, my charms are all overthrown. The speaker is Prospero. At the end of the play, he says, okay, I won my kingdom back. I own that island. My daughter is happily married, future generation and hope. And now I don't need my charms. Many critics believe that this is Shakespeare saying goodbye to the audience and saying goodbye to the theater itself in general, and saying goodbye to us even now. Many people love this, The Tempest, because they try to read between the lines and see where Shakespeare is saying goodbye. So my charms means magic. But isn't, again, literature magic? Doesn't literature and fiction change our minds? Doesn't literature help us grow, become better people, learn, gain more experiences? Yes, it has the magical power to make us better people, more open-minded, more understanding.
That's a pun, right?
Sorry?
Is it a pun?
Charms?
Yeah.
No,
No?
I'm not sure it is about a pun. But it has...
It's an irony.
Why?
You know, he's saying something, but he means he wants to say goodbye to people, to his writings and plays.
How is it irony?
I don't know.
What is irony?
It's when you say something, but you mean something
It's the opposite.
else.
No, not something
The
else.
opposite.
Probably,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it's irony. But it's funny how Shakespeare's saying, okay, now my charms are all overthrown. But in reality, he doesn't end there. Shakespeare begins here. He actually scatters his knowledge and charms all over the world, all around the world. And that's why now we continue to read Shakespeare and appreciate him and love his writing. Okay? So we go back finally to Shakespeare, to end this class. Shakespeare using the very famous metaphor of the world as a stage. Remember in Othello, in Macbeth? Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow.
Never.
No, that's King Lear. Never, never, never King Lear. No, it's King Lear. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow is Macbeth.
Yeah.
When he says, a poor player, describing man, a poor player that struts and fruts and like spends his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. Now Shakespeare, we read this last time, I think, some of you, one of you, all the world a stage. All the world a stage, and all men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts. I like how Shakespeare says men and women, men before.
Yes.
Women, we know women didn't perform on the stage then.
Why did he add
And then later on he says, and one man plays many parts, because sometimes he plays the part of a woman. I don't know, could be funny. Okay? So Shakespeare, we stop here, but we go back to wrap things up before we talk about the sonnet next class. Shakespeare is the greatest poet, playwright, literary figure, probably not in the history of English literature, but in the whole world. 400 years ago, and now he's talking to us. The themes, the characters, the jokes, the poetry, we still love, we still care about. We watch Hamlet, we feel sad for Hamlet. We watch Shylock, we feel sad for Shylock. We watch Portia, we feel proud that Portia managed to change something. The themes of shared humanity, the themes of love, of power, of money, are still themes today, are still issues we discuss even today. Shakespeare is a universal character. Shakespeare is timeless because he fits everywhere and he fits in all societies, in all places. That's why probably Shakespeare was translated to almost all languages around the world. He was performed, and he's even adapted. Many plays try to change, like many productions try to change something in them. Because we had one interesting discussion with someone who performed Othello in Africa. So what did they do? They made everyone black except for Othello. Or when you go to China, how would you do this? So Othello is a Chinese man, in a way. Maybe you can play The Merchant of Venice, where it takes place in Palestine, in occupied Jerusalem. And Shylock is a Palestinian guy trying to go to perform to something, having his house destroyed, or trying to take revenge. The beauty of Shakespeare is that he keeps giving. You read Shakespeare, you enjoy the language, and you love the characters. Even if the characters are bad and wicked, sometimes you find something interesting in them. He's master of characterization. He's a master of characterization. Now, if you have any question, please do ask. This is again Shakespeare today. The last slide. This is how we comment on Shakespeare to conclude things. Remember, in the Renaissance, now literature gives more answers than religion. People would go to the theater every time there's a play. But remember, Shakespeare, in particular, and literature in general, does not give us answers. When you read a literary text, a poem, sometimes it's not about finding answers. You could find your answer. But it's about raising more questions, showing you possibilities. What should I do, this or that? Should I do like Hamlet? Should I act like Othello? What happens if I do? What happens if I don't?
It gives us answers.
Gives us possibilities, I would say. But it raises many questions. Many people say literature is about raising questions, not answering them. Because it makes you think. It makes you a better human being, a better thinker, a better student, and a better daughter, wife, husband, son, mother, grandmother, because you've seen it all. You've lived it. When you read Hamlet, you live Hamlet. You become Hamlet. You are Hamlet. And this is how much experience we learn from just watching one play. That's why Shakespeare is still relevant and alive. His characters are alive in our imagination. We quote him, we adapt him, we study him.
Because his plays fit all people, all religions.
Regardless of religion, regardless of race. Posted these 5 questions online on the Facebook group. You're supposed to answer 3 of them. Listen, these are opinion questions, more or less. You know what opinion question is? I want your opinion. I don't want you to go copy from the internet. You're not supposed to, reading this is enough. You're still beginning to learn English and English literature. If you want to read more about Hamlet, about Othello, about The Tempest, about The Merchant of Venice, it's up to you. For more knowledge, for more background information. But for these questions, the discussions we had in the class could be enough. Okay? So what I want you to do is to choose 3 out of 5 questions. 3 out of 5. For each question, you're supposed to write a long paragraph. I don't know. It's not about how big it is. It's how well written it is. You're learning how to write paragraphs in academic writing. Apply this. Topic sentence, supporting sentences. Give me your opinion. Give me your idea about these questions. For example, we said that Shakespeare humanizes the kings. He makes them humans. But is he also exposing their weaknesses implicitly, indirectly? What do you think? Give examples from what we studied. How could Hamlet be a typical Palestinian girl or boy? Is there something in us from Hamlet? Do you identify with him? The struggle, the crisis, the identity, how he's caught between 2 worlds, the old and the modern?
Maybe he would kill her uncle without thinking.
So, what do you think? Give me your opinion. As a Palestinian, would you identify more with Shylock or with Othello? Which one do you find closer to you, to your mentality, to your way of thinking as a Palestinian? Which one would you feel, more sorrowful towards? Could a woman have achieved what Shakespeare did? Shakespeare, the man, the author, the playwright. Remember, women at that time were not considered as intellectual, as smart, as intelligent as men. And Shakespeare, somewhere, he proved that this is in a way wrong. Why didn't a woman in Shakespeare's time wrote these plays? Why didn't a woman write these plays? What's wrong? Was it her problem? Was it the society? We can learn about this from the plays, from Ophelia, Gertrude, from probably Portia. Maybe if you don't like the question, it's up to you. And then, finally, some accuse Shakespeare of being anti-feminist. What is anti-feminist? Someone who thinks women are not equal to men. They don't deserve equal rights. They should spend their time at home in the kitchen. But other critics say, no. Shakespeare is not doing this because Shakespeare hates women or thinks less of them, but because Shakespeare wants to expose the society. It's an opinion question. Do you agree? Prove it. Do you disagree? Also prove it. From the examples we discussed here. Again, if you want to read more online or go to the library, read something more about any of these plays, do it, but please don't copy paste. If you copy paste, this is called plagiarism. Plagiarize. And plagiarism is the worst thing a student could do. Probably the second worst thing next to racism. You're not racist, you're not plagiarists. I want your opinion. I don't want what people write online. Okay, this is 5 marks. If you want more questions, please do ask. I'll stop here and I'll stay for 10 minutes if you need to know more about the questions about Shakespeare or anything. Thank you very much and see you next class for the sonnet.